Give it up for Eli.
Okay, does this have a laser pointer?
Yeah, top button.
Ooh, cool. Okay. Hi, my name is Eli. I'm an animation student. For my Zenith presentation, I wanted to experiment with Blender, but more specifically geometry nodes. Blender can do a lot of things. It can do 3D animation, modeling, all sorts of stuff. One of the cool new things that it can do is geometry nodes. I didn't know much about it, but it sounded cool, so I wanted to learn more about it. In the process, I learned that it's basically a tool to algorithmically augment geometry using like a node-based structure. Sort of, that's complicated, but basically, it takes some geometry and it changes it. But I'm not doing the changes myself. I tell it how to change objects. It's very versatile. It can do stuff, easy terrain generation. That took about 2 minutes to get like really detailed terrain like that. Much easier than doing it by hand. It's also great for asset creation. Instead of spending hours and hours modeling 100 different trees, I spend 1 hour making a tool that can generate 100 trees on command. Very easy for making the process over and over again. Also just make cool stuff like that. That took me about like 10 minutes. Looks pretty cool. So I really had no idea what I was doing. When I started, I had to search up some tutorials. So my first project that I did was making this sort of like 3D like music visualizer thing. I just found it interesting. I was experimenting with lighting with an emissive surface coming from the bottom. But I think this was sort of my first foray into like actually doing something interesting. Just talking about this for a second so you kind of understand this like workflow here. I'm going to see how I can make this as simple as I can to talk about. But I basically generated a bunch of points that these bars would be raising up of. And then using a noise map, I'm able to determine the scale on different dimensions to make it go higher and wider. And then I'm placing some orbs on top of each of these bars, and then putting orbs on top of each of the orbs to make this cool, interesting shape. So for my like actual sort of like final project that I wanted to create after I warmed myself up a bit, I wanted to create a terrain generation sort of animation. I was going a little bit for like the Minecraft aesthetic, as you can see, just like blue water, like cubey terrain. This was my very basic sort of node setup. It's not very good, and it just uses this basic tree. I didn't really like that. All the trees kind of look the same. It's kind of boring, and I had more time to burn for my Zenith. So I created these really cool, algorithmically created trees that every single tree here should be unique. It's not, because it will explode my computer if all of these trees are unique. But I could have done it if my computer was the most powerful computer in the world. I'm very proud of this because it took a lot of different iterations and variations and experimenting to get this shape. I just want to talk a little bit about how I created this. So first we start just with like a plane, and then using this noise map here that changes based on the frame count, I'm able to place a bunch of these pillars on the plane and then scale them up based on the noise map. And then once we have all of these cubes that are all scaled up and make this terrain thing, I'm able to place a bunch of points that place these trees. Now, I mean, I'll consider this to be quote unquote like fairly simple, but the hard part is actually making these trees. That's like 3/4 of the effort. My tree generator, I think, is more complicated than my terrain generator itself. I barely understand what's going on here. But basically, we're creating some lines. We're having those lines twirl in on itself. And then we're giving each of these lines a shape. And then based on these lines, we're instantiating a bunch of these branches that are coming off of it. each one of these branches is its own node group over here. And then we're putting these leaves based on these invisible circles that are coming from the ends of each of the branches. And then I'm generating 3 or 4 leaves off of each of these circles that's coming off each of these branches. This thing, I would have worked on this project more, but I've got almost 1 million objects in my scene, and it kind of exploded my computer whenever I tried to do anything else. So that's kind of my stopping point. So that was my, that was the main geometry node parts. But I also wanted to play with a Blender feature called compositing. If you're a film student, you know a little bit, at least a little bit about compositing. But Blender has a little bit of built-in compositing software built in. Instead of bringing it into a different software, you can actually composite the final image before you render it. Now, I don't really know much about compositing. I just play with some cool effects, and I got this cool, grainy, like motion blurry thing. But it's pretty cool. Talking a little bit about that. It's really cool. It's really fast. I think it's easier and just like more straightforward than bringing it into a different software. But there's no going back because you can't render it like twice, like one with composite and one without. So if you don't like how it looks, you have to stop the render and do that all over again. Thank you.
Got about 7 minutes.
Dude, that is complicated. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
When you started with Blender, did you like do anything with like did you go straight into the tutorials and then like made everything with them, or did you do anything with like the modeling or the sculpture?
Well, I didn't do it. I've used Blender in the past. Like, this is my first time using it. So I've done that, but not for this project. I just wanted to focus purely on geometry nodes. The only bit of non-geometry node stuff was modeling the leaves, because I had to place an object on each of those, so I just had to do it quick.
Have you always been interested in like terrain generation, or was it just from learning about geometry nodes you were like, oh, maybe I can do terrain generation? Like,
yeah, pretty much. I'm interested in the software, and I figured that terrain generation is a cool-looking way to showcase what I think.
What are the strings connecting all the boxes?
Oh, yeah. So each of these boxes sort of change the geometry a little. So, for example, it's just bringing in different data. I'm bringing in this is a circle, and I'm bringing in the geometry of that circle to this box that I believe it places some lines on that circle, and then I'm breaking all that geometry into this box. Some of these things, these blue lines mean there's math going on. It's not bringing geometry. It means that I want to multiply the curve tangent by 1.4 in order to get it to curve the way that I want it to. Don't ask me what curve tangent means. I just plugged it in and made it work better.
Is there anything specific that got you like interested overall in like wanting to do this?
I think that doing things by hand is boring. So I think that doing things by hand that will make me do more things, not by hand, is more efficient. Also, I think Blender is going to become more industry standard. A lot of different companies are picking it up. It's free, it's open source. I'd rather support and learn a free open source software. Something costs like $30 a month, probably more. Like Maya, for example, that can do similar things. And this is getting updated so much faster. I feel like this is more cutting edge.
at what point in your learning process did it start to become like a little intuitive? Because this to me is just crazy, and I feel like I had to look at a tutorial every single time I wanted to do something. But like, when were you like thinking like, oh, I want to do this, and you didn't have to look up how to do it, you could just kind of do it?
So I searched up tutorials until the very end. Like, this isn't my first. Like, I searched up a tutorial on how to make a tree generator, and then I did my own one, slightly different, making it like just look a little more interesting, right? So a lot of like the main stuff I got from tutorials, and I think what I did is I brought in all these different tidbits together, and my like figure it out myself moment is how do I put this all together into one project? Yes.
Is there a way to optimize it so it's less heavy on your computer?
So you see these 6 boxes? Each of those things like exponentially scales up the number of leaves that I have. So in fact, 2 of these boxes aren't even connected. If that's go, it would be multiple million leaves, which would kill the computer. So it's more just like a, how intensive do you want to make it yourself? If I wanted to make this slightly more intensive, I would have dealt less intensive. I would have probably done particle systems to create these leaves. They're usually a little bit more less intensive on the computer.
Can you organize or like put highlights within the editing tab, like these like transparent boxes?
Yeah, I did that to make it easier for you, like for me and other people to see. This part does that. This part does that. So
Which section does like each? What's their role?
well, these create the trunk. This puts on the leaves. Each of these boxes actually is the code to put on the leaves. Sorry, no, these create the branches, my bad. These create the leaves. And this is the putting the materials and actually giving, without it, these would all just be invisible strings. This actually gives it the mesh. Do I have 10 minutes, 5 minutes left? Okay,
No, I told you a minute ago we had 7 minutes left. We picked
okay, I'm done.
We picked your 7.
Thank you.